Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Transformation Talk. I'm here today with Kristin Noelle, whose website, Trust Tending, is a warm and welcoming space for growing trust. She is a writer and a beautiful visual artist, and thank you so much for being here, Kristin.
Oh, I'm delighted to be with you.
So we know each other in real life, too, which is always so exciting. And we've had some conversations around this, but what I want to ask you about is your big grief has a lot to do, if I understand this correctly, with losing or leaving the religion that you grew up in.
That's right. Yeah.
So can you take us sort of through a little bit of what that looked like when you were little and what shifted in you to bring this grief on?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was raised an evangelical Christian and was very, very devout. Just really gave my heart to this religion and these beliefs, and I spent my childhood, my teen years, and through college just feeling like this was the biggest identity marker that you could ever assign me. Was I am devoted to Christ, and I'm trying to put those values into action. And of course, those values and that worldview are always filtered through lots of filters: our personal experience and our communities that are helping to define things for us. So I came out of college with a particular kind of take on what life is, what humans are like, who God is, how the universe is made, all these things, and took a job doing community development work in my hometown. I moved back to my hometown with my husband, and one of the training and the sort of philosophy that kind of undergirded our work was something called asset-based community development. It was ABC development. And that whole perspective is kind of, rather than taking a traditional model of looking at what's deficient in a community, like, what's going wrong, and then how can we build programs to kind of address those things. It's looking at what's going right, and how can you really build on what's already present there that can help transform the community. And so, having been raised in a context that had a pretty dark view of humans and human nature, and being all jazzed up about this new way of thinking about people, and of course, when you're looking for something, you're really seeing it. And I just felt a real dissonance there, and so that was kind of the beginning of a kind of unraveling, where I began to kind of question some of where I had come from, and ended up enrolling in a couple different master's programs, one after another, to really go deep into these questions. I got one in theology and one in New Testament, really trying to understand what's real, what's true. And by the end of those degrees, and just throughout them, just felt like somehow all the identity markers I had used for making sense of anything felt like they had been erased. And I was pretty devastated by that.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big, it sounds really easy to say, like I sort of lost my childhood religion kind of thing, but it sounds like it was such a deep part of who you are, or who you were.
Right. And I've tried, like, it was such a deep, dark time for me. Like, I was deeply depressed, and I had no intention of this happening. Like, this was the thing that was most important to me. And kind of, it's been 15 years now since that started, and I've really been kind of working on this thing for 15 years, trying to understand, so what was really going on there? Why was that such a deep loss? What was the grief there? And I feel like I'm just starting to understand a little bit more about that. I feel like I think I had this story about how the sort of the physics of the universe, which is that your goal is to be good and to, your goal is to be good and live with as much integrity as you can. And if you do that, then you will earn respect and admiration, and things will just work out for you. And so with that as my understanding of how the world works, and then to feel like, oh my goodness, like I was trying to be good. I honestly was having as much integrity as I could and asking my questions and really, sitting with them. And here I'm absolutely troubling all of my closest, dearest people that love me. I'm causing them to think that I'm doing horrible things, turning away from something that was dear to all of us. And so I think that just raised this sense of disillusionment, like, whoa, you can, it made me feel like the universe was unfair. I think it didn't destroy that belief that these are still your goals. It just made me believe that, oh, and it's messing with you because you can't actually reach those goals anyway. Like if you try to do these things, there's no promise that life will work out as you want it to be, or people will all like you or respect you even, or things like that. And so I think it's been that was really kind of the start of my process of that brought me to my work today, of really trying to ask the question, how can I trust this universe? How can I trust even my own self in recognizing what's true,
Yeah. Great. I mean, really fundamental questions. I think that a lot of us ask ourselves, what did your path look like from that place of finishing these 2 masters, feeling really depressed, and then what? What did that look like?
Well, for a year, like after those degrees, I was in such bad shape. I was in really bad shape, physically and mentally and emotionally. So I took a year off of working and studying and doing anything. My husband was able to pay the bills for that year, and went to therapy, did a lot of journaling, and just slowly began to see light again. And that's when I started writing in earnest. I decided, I need to write. Somehow I wanted to put all of this stuff into a novel. And so I started taking writing classes, fiction writing classes, and I wrote the draft of a novel. And I did some, I guess my vocational path kind of took a number of twists and turns. But where my heart really was trying to find light, and trying to find, what do I mean by that? That sounds so fairy kind of, or something. Trying to find a way of being that felt hopeful, and not scary, and not sort of like alone in a dark universe kind of thing.
Share a couple of practices maybe that helped you really find your feet at this time?
Sure. One of them that became a lifeline for me, that I didn't expect to be a lifeline, was actually writing out my dreams, like my actual dreams that I had at night. I had always thought that dreams were just kind of a random kind of your brain sort of making sense of what happened that day or whatever. But I had a therapist who really saw them as more than that, and as teachers. And so I started almost daily writing out dreams and realizing, oh my goodness, I can remember so much more than I thought I could of a dream if I just sit there and try to write it out. And I started recognizing symbols that kept showing up and patterns that kept showing up, and that became like I was in so much pain through that time. And you know how when you're in pain, sometimes you go through these stages of feeling it acutely and then feeling kind of numb and feeling sick of feeling bad, and so you just sort of don't think about anything, and all these stages. And I felt like being able to go into my dreams, even when I was feeling numb or when I was feeling like I don't care about anything anymore, things like that, was a way for me to still have access to growth and to almost like teaching or guidance that I really needed, when it felt like my logic mind wasn't in a place where it could take me where I needed to go. So that was one practice for me that really powerfully changed my life direction, and just daily kind of showing me more about myself and where I needed to heal.
So you have been with your husband forever. I mean, high school sweethearts, and you're going through this incredible emotional, spiritual, mental turmoil. What do I want to ask? How was that for the two of you? I mean, in the sense of you've stayed together, but just sort of was that a source of comfort? Was it a source of stress to be in relationship at that time? Can you talk a little bit about that?
For us, I'll speak for myself, but I think he shares a lot of this perspective too. But I think it was a deep, deep comfort. Like we really, we came from the same context, and we were able to really get each other in the questions we were asking. We're asking a lot of the similar questions, and I feel like and this is probably true for a lot of different types of transformation. I feel like when you have a certain identity, in my case it was a religious identity, but I think if it's a relationship identity or mom or whatever, vocational, and then that really shifts, I feel like it spreads into a lot of other arenas, and so the healing you do in that arena starts to get into other areas of life. And so as I began to find my strength and my voice and begin to listen more to my own self, rather than sort of this external idea of what God or what the religious community would think is appropriate, it began to raise some issues of the power balance and dynamic in our relationship. So that's not fun to work on. That's tough relationship stuff. How do we navigate this power balance? So I don't want to say it was all just this rosy, easy, happy thing, but I think fundamentally, related to the actual grief and disorientation of that loss of my worldview, it was a deep comfort to have each other and kind of walk through that together. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, because I would imagine that might not be the case for everyone, that you can actually sort of walk through that together and come out the other side.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We regularly would say, oh my goodness, like if we were going different directions on this path, I don't think we could have made it. Yeah. I mean, it's just so, too hard to make it if you're heading different directions, I feel.
So is there anything from that upbringing that came through that stayed with you in a positive way that you still carry with you today?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. That's a really great question. I think I was raised with, I still have deep respect for Jesus and what he did, and the values that he had. And one of the things that my particular community I felt was really strong in was to really have a deep heart for social justice and for recognizing the underdog and trying to be aware of the underdog and not ignore those on the fringes. And that I love that. I think that's so beautiful, and it definitely is part of my DNA from that shaping, I think my community had so many people who were deeply loving and deeply devoted and like not hypocrites. A lot of times I feel like people who come out of religion have a lot of bitterness at some hypocrisy that they feel. But I just feel like the people I was with and were, surrounded by, including my parents, were just so good-hearted. And so I come away with beautiful role models, I feel like, of what it looks like to wholeheartedly try to be living out your values. Yeah, I think that's I really gained that from my upbringing.
So take us through how you moved from this place of questioning to the work you do now with trust tending.
One of my mentors, kind of through my darkest years, his name is Doug Frank, and he was an instructor up at an alternative education program in Oregon called the Oregon Extension. And he had this worksheet that he created for his work with students. I was never a student of his. I got to know him through some friends. But in conversation with him, he shared this worksheet where he kind of divided all of life into the spectrum of fear, and like fear is on one side and trust is on the other. And he kind of had these two columns where he was kind of describing what is a trusting worldview and what's a fearful worldview. How do these things show up? And that just felt like such a light bulb moment for me, or such a nice lens or model for me to understand a lot of what I was experiencing through my dark season and where I wanted to go, and just recognizing, you know what? Yeah, like that is the crux of what I feel is my sense of calling now, or my sense of desire at least, is to help us spend more and more time on the trust end of that spectrum and being in movement toward the trust end of that spectrum. I don't even remember when I read that. I don't remember when that came about, but I just remember feeling, I guess this goes way back to childhood, but I just remember feeling such a sense of calling to bring light to the world and healing to the world. And so once I started to feel like, wow, I'm standing on more trust than I ever have been now. And once it began to feel that way, I recognized, this is really what I want to try to help put a spotlight on, bring healing to other people who are kind of caught in the sort of fear cycle inside. Just kind of all of us.
Yeah, it's yes, absolutely. And I love that you go at it two ways too, because you've got words. You're a beautiful writer, but you've also got this visual art that you do, accompanied usually by some words. But it's just really powerful to have that visual next to it. I find.
Yes, and especially as one who has spent a lot of time in my mind, like trying to answer the questions of the universe with my logic mind, but also trying to to heal myself through my mind. Like, I don't want to poo-poo that. There's been a tremendous role that's played in my life, but gosh, discovering other ways to access that healing, and that having these messages get into you, whether it's the visual art like you're talking about, but music and, you know, like photography, you know, there's so many different ways that you can kind of augment or get around some of these ego things that happen when you're trying to do things just in your mind. That I totally agree. So powerful.
And I want to mention, for those of you who don't know Kristin's work yet, your Heart to Art series, which is new, is absolutely incredible. Please go to her website. It's KristinNoelle.com, and we'll have obviously the bio and the link to it. But it's, you take stories from readers and you create a piece of art around it and some words, and they're just amazing. So thank you for bringing that to the world. All right, I'm going to ask you my last 3 questions. If you could wave a magic wand and change anything about the world, what would it be?
I think I would wave a wand that allows us to recognize what a charade fear is. And I don't say that lightly, because a lot of what we're afraid of has to do with real loss, you know, whether it's our life or someone we love, or an identity that we loved, or, you know, things like that. So I don't mean to put a platitude over the real suffering we experience, but I was just talking with a friend this morning, and she quoted, I haven't read A Course in Miracles, but she quoted that line, "Nothing real can be threatened." And I think at heart that's true. I think there is a love and a security that can't ever be taken away. And so to be able to have us actually see that and see fear for what it is, I'd be into that.
Which is exactly what you're doing with your work. So there's the magic wand. It's a paintbrush. And a pen. What brings you the most joy?
Oh boy. You know, I guess I could answer that in sort of the more lofty way, just to say transformation, like both seeing it and experiencing it in my own life, but, you know, observing it, participating in it with other people. It just lights me up, you know, healing, growing. And then to my less lofty answer, but nonetheless joyous, I love noticing just the little things in life, you know, and kids have been a real help in even kind of helping that, but just little things like the texture of leaves and the color of a flower, and the feeling or the smell in the air, and, you know, just things like that, like just actually noticing those things makes me really happy.
I'm with you there. What's one fun or interesting thing about you that makes you uniquely you?
Well, maybe something that no one would necessarily know about me. I don't think even you know this about me. I love building things, like working with wood, like designing. I think in another life I would actually design my own house and build it myself.
Wow.
So like this summer, yeah, I spent a bunch of time building a desk and a, you know, shelving and a bookshelf, and for our office we recently moved, and things like that. So yeah, I love hardware stores and building things.
That is fantastic. I did not know about you, and I love that. That is such a great skill to have. I love it. Cool. Well, maybe in your next, I don't know, incarnation, you'll start, or not even incarnation, I just mean like
life season.
Yeah, in life season, exactly. You'll start building and designing furniture or something fun.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you so, so much, Kristin. I could talk to you for quite a bit longer than we have right now about all of this, but I really appreciate you sharing what you shared. And I encourage everyone, please go to KristinNoelle.com, check out her work. She also actually sells her prints. She has an Etsy shop, and I have a few of them myself. So thank you again. I'm so glad to be with you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, Alana.